Welcome, kindred souls, to luminous lore and rituals. If you're seeking a gentle journey into the ancient whispers of mythology for peaceful sleep, focused study, or soulful practice, you are in the perfect place. Settle in, breathe deep, and prepare to wander with Odin. Before we embark, a gentle reminder to like this video and subscribe to Luminous Lore and Rituals, ensuring you don't miss our weekly offerings of mythic storytelling, seasonal rites, and guided meditations designed to calm and inspire. Tonight, we continue our exploration with Odin the Wanderer, Ancient Paths to Peaceful Sleep. Have you ever felt a restless spirit within, a yearning for wisdom that only the journey itself can satisfy? Odin, the All-Father, often shed his grand attire, taking on the guise of a cloaked wanderer. Why would the most powerful of gods choose such a humble path? What secrets did he seek, and what solace did he find on those ancient, winding roads through mist-shrouded forests, long before the dawn of our own memory? Here at Luminous Lore and Rituals, we believe in the power of these timeless tales, delivered with slow, calming narration and visuals steeped in gentle, long wavelength hues designed to support your evening wind down without disturbing your precious melatonin. Let these ancestral stories, paired with our soothing soundscapes, guide you to a place of relaxation, reflection, and ultimately, peaceful rest. Tonight, let us follow the shadowed footsteps of Odin, discovering the wisdom embedded in his solitary quest. Part 2, Odin the Wanderer. Chapter 1, Odin Goes to Mimir's Well, his sacrifice for wisdom. Odin no longer rode Sleipnir. He wore no golden armor, bore no spear. He had become Odin the Wanderer. Cloaked in dark blue and bearing a traveler's staff, he moved through Midgard toward Jotunheim and Mimir's Well. On the way he met a giant riding a great stag. "Who art thou, O brother?" Odin asked. "I am Vafthrudnir, the wisest of the giants," replied the rider. Many sought wisdom from Vafthrudnir, and those who came had to answer his riddles. Fail and the giant took their heads. "I am Odin the Wanderer," Odin said. "I would strive to learn something from thee." The giant laughed. "Ho ho, I'm ready for a game. Know the stakes. My head to thee if I cannot answer any question thou wilt ask. If thou canst not answer any question I ask, then thy head goes to me. Oh ho ho, let us begin." "I am ready," Odin said. Vafthrudnir asked first, "Tell me the name of the river that divides Asgard from Jotunheim." "Ifling," Odin answered. "Ifling that is dead cold, yet never frozen." "Right," said the giant. "What are the names of the horses that day and night drive across the sky?" "Skinfax and Hrimfax," Odin replied. Vafthrudnir, startled to hear names known only to gods and the wisest of giants, asked one last question. "Tell me the name of the plain on which the last battle will be fought." "The plain of Vigard," said Odin, "a plain 100 miles long and 100 miles across." Now it was Odin's turn. He asked Vafthrudnir a question no one but Odin could ask. What will be the last words that Odin will whisper into the ear of Baldur, his dear son? The giant sprang down, looking at the wanderer keenly. "Only Odin knows what his last words to Baldur will be," he said. "Thou art Odin, O wanderer, and that question I cannot answer." "Then," said Odin, "answer me this. What price will Mimir ask for a draught from the well of wisdom that he guards?" "He will ask thy right eye as a price, O Odin," Vafthrudnir said. "Will he ask no less?" Odin asked. "No less," said the giant. "Many have come to him for a draught, but none yet has paid the price." "I give up my claim to thy head," Odin said. Vafthrudnir rode off upon his stag. The price was terrible. Odin almost turned back. To lose his right eye for all time, yet he pressed on. To the south he saw Muspelheim and Surtur with the flaming sword. To the north he heard Virgelmir pouring from Niflheim. He knew the world must not be left between fire and darkness. He, eldest of the gods, would win whatever wisdom he could to help save it. At last he came under the great root of Yggdrasil where Mimir sat, guardian of the well of wisdom, his deep eyes bent upon the deep water. Mimir, who drank daily from the well, knew the visitor. "Hail, Odin, eldest of the gods," he said. Odin made reverence. "I would drink from your well, Mimir." "There is a price to be paid," Mimir answered. "All who have come here have shrunk from paying that price. Wilt thou pay it, eldest of the gods?" "I will not shrink from the price that has to be paid, Mimir," Odin said. "Then drink." Mimir filled a great horn with water from the well and gave it to Odin. Odin took the horn with both hands and drank. As he drank, the future became plain to him. All sorrows and troubles that would fall on gods and men, and also why they must fall. He saw how, by facing sorrow nobly, gods and men might leave in the world a force that one day would destroy the evil that brought terror and despair. When he had drained the horn, Odin put his hand to his face and plucked out his right eye. The pain was terrible, yet he made no cry. He bowed his head and hid his face with his cloak while Mimir took the eye and let it sink deep into the well. There the eye shone in the water, a sign of the price the Father of the Gods had paid for wisdom. Chapter 2. Odin Faces an Evil Man. In an earlier time, when his wisdom was less, Odin lived among men with Frigga on a bleak island. They were known then as Grimnir the fisherman and his wife. They watched over the sons of men, choosing which to foster and train for the work of saving the world from the giants. One day they saw the sons of King Hoard and decided these boys might be forged into heroes. The boys went fishing. A storm drove their boat toward the island. Odin and Frigga took them in for the winter. Odin said, "We shall see which of the two can be formed into the noblest hero." Frigga favored the elder Ægir, gentle, quiet, thoughtful. Odin favored the younger Gyrd, strong, passionate, loud-voiced. Odin trained Gyrd in boldness, leaping from rock to rock, climbing cliffs, fighting at the bear's den. Ægir learned at Frigga's knee, listening to her tales and gaining wisdom. Each showed skill. Gyrd excelled in most trials. Spring came and Odin built a boat for both boys. Before they left, Odin told Gyrd, "Do not be too proud to receive a fisherman in your hall. A king should welcome the poorest who come." "I will be a hero," Gyrd answered. "And I would be king too, only Ægir little good was born before me." They rowed toward King Hroðing's land. Near the castle Gyrd did a cowardly thing. He turned the boat back to sea and cast the oars away, then swam for shore, strong enough to save himself, leaving Ægir adrift. Gyrd reached his father's castle. Ægir drifted away. King Hroðing, who had thought both sons lost, rejoiced to see Gyrd. He set him beside the throne. When the king died, Gyrd became king. Years later, Odin, now blind of one eye and wandering, came among men to judge kings and people with his new wisdom. He reached Gyrd's kingdom. Approaching the king's hall, men on dark horses rode ahead. The first rode so close the wanderer nearly was trampled. Only one servant tended the stable, Ægir. Odin knew at once who was who. He and Ægir entered the stable. Ægir broke bread, gave Odin straw to sit on. Odin said, "I would sit at the fire in the king's hall and eat my supper of meat." "Nay, stay here," Ægir begged. "The king is angry today, he might repulse you." "A king turns away a wanderer?" Odin replied. "It cannot be." Odin rose and went to the door. A hunchbacked porter barred it. "Not in this king's hall," the porter said. The king's voice called him away, and Odin strode into the hall. There sat Gyrd at table with dark-bearded, cruel men. Odin knew the boy he had trained had become leader of robbers. "Sing to us, wanderer," one of the dark men shouted. Odin stood between two stone pillars and sang a song that reproached the king and denounced those who followed his cruel ways. "Seize him," the king ordered. They threw chains round Odin and bound him between the stone pillars. "He came into this hall for warmth, and warmth he shall have," said Gyrd, and they heaped wood around him. The king himself set fire to the faggots. The flames played about Odin, but they did not burn him. When the wood had burned away, Odin remained, his terrible gaze fixed upon those hard men. They slept, leaving him chained. Odin could have broken free, but he wished to learn more of that house. The servants were ordered to bring him no food. Yet at dawn, when none were near, Ægir crept to Odin with a horn of ale and gave it to him. The next evening, after the king returned from his robberies and ate with his friends, he again ordered the faggots piled around Odin. Once more they watched with delight the fire playing round a living man. Again Odin stood unharmed, his terrible gaze deepening the king's hatred. All day he remained in chains, and servants were forbidden to bring him food or drink. Only Ægir secretly brought him a horn of ale at dawn. Night after night the same cruelty was done to Odin. For 8 nights they piled the faggots and set them ablaze. On the 9th night, when the fires were lit once more, Odin lifted his voice and began to sing. His song grew louder and louder until the king, his companions, and the servants had to stand still and listen. Odin sang of Gyrd the king, how the gods had given him strength and skill, and how, instead of using them nobly, he had become like a wild beast. He sang of the vengeance that was coming upon this ignoble ruler. As he sang, the flames died down. Where they had seen only a friendless wanderer before, the company now saw one who looked more kingly than any king of the earth. The chains fell from Odin's body and he advanced toward the evil men. Gyrd rushed at him with sword in hand. The blade struck, but Odin stood unhurt. "Thy life runs out." The gods they are wroth with thee. Draw near if thou canst. Odin thou shalt see. In fear of that terrible gaze, Ægir and his company shrank back. As they shrank, they were changed into beasts, into wolves that ranged the forest. Ægir stepped forward, and Odin declared him king. The people rejoiced. Ægir's cruel reign was ended. Ægir proved to be both kind and strong, victorious in his rule. Chapter 3. Odin Wins for Men the Magic Mead. It was the dwarfs who brewed the magic mead, and it was the giants who hid it away. But it was Odin who brought it from the place where it was hidden and gave it to the sons of men. Those who drank of the magic mead became very wise, and not only that, but they could put their wisdom into such beautiful words that everyone who heard would love and remember it. The dwarfs brewed the magic mead through cruelty and villainy. They made it out of the blood of a man, Kvasir the poet. He had wisdom, and he had such beautiful words with it that what he said was loved and remembered by all. The dwarfs brought Kvasir down into their caverns and they killed him there. Now, they said, we have Kvasir's blood and Kvasir's wisdom. No one else will have his wisdom but us. They poured the blood into 3 jars, mixed it with honey, and from it they brewed the magic mead. Having killed a man, the dwarfs grew bolder. They came out of their caverns and went up and down through Midgard, the world of men. They went into Jotunheim and began to play their evil tricks on the most harmless of the giants. They found one giant who was very simple. His name was Gilling. They persuaded Gilling to row them out to sea in a boat. Then the 2 most cunning dwarfs, Ægir and Fylor, steered the boat onto a rock. The boat split. Gilling, who could not swim, drowned. The dwarfs clambered onto the wreck and came safely ashore. Delighted at their wickedness, they sought more mischief. Ægir and Fylor next led their band to Gilling's house and screamed out to his wife that Gilling was dead. She ran out weeping and clapping her hands. The 2 dwarfs had climbed onto the lintel, and as she came out, they dropped a millstone on her head. She fell dead. The dwarfs rejoiced in the destruction they had caused. They grew so insolent that they made songs boasting of how they had killed Kvasir the poet, Gilling the giant, and Gilling's wife. They remained around Jotunheim, tormenting whom they could and flattering themselves that they were great and strong. But they stayed too long. Suttung, Gilling's brother, tracked them down and captured them. Suttung was not simple like Gilling. He was cunning and covetous. Once the dwarfs were in his hands, escape was impossible. He left them on a rock in the sea, a rock the tide would cover. Suttung stood in the water taller than the rock. The incoming tide did not reach above his knees. He watched the dwarfs as the water rose and fear took them. "Oh, take us off the rock, good Suttung," they cried. "Take us off and we will give you gold and jewels. Take us off and we will give you a necklace as beautiful as Brisingamen." Suttung laughed. He had no need of gold. Then Fylor and Ægir cried, "Take us off the rock and we will give you the jars of the magic mead we have brewed." "The magic mead," said Suttung. "This is something no one else has. It might help us in battle against the gods." "Yes, I will get the magic mead from them." He hauled the dwarfs off the rock but held Ægir and Fylor while the others went to fetch the jars. Suttung took the mead to a cavern in a mountain near his home. Thus the magic mead, brewed by the dwarfs through cruelty, came into the hands of the giants. And the tale now tells how Odin, the eldest of the gods, then living as Odin the Wanderer, took the magic mead from Suttung and brought it into the world of men. Suttung had a daughter named Gunnlod, whose goodness and beauty were like Gerda and Skadi, the giant maidens favored by the dwellers in Asgard. To guard the mead, Suttung enchanted Gunnlod, turning her into a witch with long teeth and sharp nails, and shut her in the cavern with the jars. Odin honored Kvasir above all men. The dwarfs who had slain him shut themselves in their caverns and never came out again into the world of men. Odin resolved to get the magic mead and give it to men so they might gain wisdom and speak it in words that all would love and remember. How Odin won the mead from Suttung's rock-covered cavern, and how he broke the spell on Gunnlod, is a story often told by the hearth. 9 strong thralls were mowing in a field when a wanderer in a dark blue cloak and carrying a staff passed by. One thrall called to him, "Tell them in the house of Boggy up yonder that I can mow no more until a whetstone to sharpen my scythe is sent to me." "Here is a whetstone," said the wanderer, drawing one from his belt. The thrall whetted his scythe and began to mow. The grass fell before it as if cut by the wind. "Give us the whetstone, give us the whetstone," cried the others. The wanderer tossed the whetstone among them and left them quarreling. The wanderer came to Boggy's house and was given supper. A messenger burst in from the field. "Boggy," he cried, "your 9 thralls are all dead. They killed each other fighting over a whetstone. There are no thralls left." "What shall I do?" said Boggy. "My fields will lie unmown. I shall have no hay for winter." "I might work for you," said the wanderer. One man's work is no use, said Boggy. I must have the work of 9. I shall do the work of 9, the Wanderer promised. He labored in the giant's field and performed the work of 9 men in a day. Stay with me for the season, Boggy said, and I shall reward you. Vegtam the Wanderer stayed and worked. When the season's work was done, Boggy asked what reward he desired. The only reward I shall ask, said Vegtam, is a draught of the magic mead. The magic mead? Said Boggy. I do not know where it is or how to get it. Your brother Suttung has it. Go and claim a draught for me. Boggy went to Suttung. On hearing the request, Suttung raged. A draught of the magic mead? To no one will I give a draught. Have I not enchanted my daughter Gunnlod to watch it? You tell me a wanderer who has done the work of 9 asks for such a fee. O giant as foolish as Gilling. Off. Who would do such work and demand such a fee but one of our enemies, the Æsir? Go from me and never speak of the mead again. Boggy returned and told the wanderer. I hold you to your bargain, said Vegtam. You will get me the fee I asked for. Come with me and help me get it. He led Boggy to the cavern where the mead was hidden. Before the cavern lay a great mass of stone. We cannot move that stone, Boggy said. I cannot help you. The wanderer drew an auger from his belt. This will bore through the rock if there is strength behind it. You have the strength, giant. Begin. Boggy took the auger and bored with all his might while the wanderer leaned on his staff, calm and majestic in his blue cloak. I have made a deep, deep hole. It goes through the rock, Boggy at last declared. The wanderer went to the hole and blew into it. Dust flew back into their faces. So that is your boasted strength, giant, he said. You have not bored halfway. Work again. Boggy bored deeper. He blew into the hole and at last his breath passed through. He looked up. His eyes were fierce and he gripped the auger like a knife. Look up to the head of the rock, said the wanderer. As Boggy looked, the wanderer changed himself into a snake and slipped into the hole. Boggy struck at him with the auger, hoping to kill him, but the snake slid through. Behind the rock was a hollow lit by shining crystals. Within it sat an ill-looking witch with long teeth and sharp nails, rocking and letting tears fall. O youth and beauty, she sang, O sight of men and women, sad for me that I am shut away, with only this cavern and this horrible form. A snake glided across the floor. Oh that you were deadly and would slay me, cried the witch. The snake passed. Then a soft voice spoke, Gunnlod, Gunnlod. She turned and saw a majestic man in a dark blue cloak, Odin, the eldest of the gods. You have come to take the magic mead my father has set me to guard, she cried. You shall not have it. I will spill it upon the thirsty earth of the cavern first. Gunnlod, he said, and he came to her. She saw him and felt the red blood of youth return to her cheeks. She pressed her sharp-nailed hands to her breast and felt them pierce her flesh. Save me from all this ugliness, she cried. I will save you, Odin said. He took her hands and held them. He kissed her mouth. The marks of ill favor left her. She straightened. Her eyes became wide and deep blue, her mouth red, her hands soft and fair. She became as fair as Gerda, the giant maid whom Frey had wed. They looked at one another, then sat side by side and spoke softly, Odin, the eldest of the gods, and Gunnlod, the beautiful giant maiden. She gave him the 3 jars of the magic mead and promised to go with him out of the cavern. For 3 days they stayed together. Then Odin, by his wisdom, found hidden paths and passages out of the cavern and brought Gunnlod into the daylight. He carried with him the jars of the magic mead, the mead whose taste gives wisdom and the power to put that wisdom into words all love and remember. Gunnlod, who had tasted a little of the mead, wandered the world singing of Odin's beauty and might, and of her love for him. Chapter 4. Odin tells to Vidar, his silent son, the secret of his doings. It was not only to giants and to men that Odin showed himself when he went through Jotunheim and Midgard as Vegtam the Wanderer. He met gods too, some who lived far from Asgard and others who came into Midgard and Jotunheim. Far within a wilderness, with branches and tall grass growing around him, sat Vidar, Odin's silent son. Near him a horse grazed, saddled and always ready for a swift journey. Odin, then Vegtam the Wanderer, came into that quiet place and spoke to Vidar. O Vidar, he said, strangest of all my sons, God who will live when all of us have passed away, God who will bring the memory of the dwellers of Asgard into a world that will not know their power. Well do I know why the horse grazes near you, that you may spring upon it and ride unchecked, a son speeding to avenge his father. To you only, O Vidar the Silent One, will I speak the secrets of my doings. Who but you can know why I, Odin, the eldest of the gods, hung on the tree Yggdrasil 9 days and 9 nights? mine own spear transfixing me. I hung on that windy tree to learn the wisdom that would give me power in the 9 worlds. On the 9th night the runes of wisdom appeared before my eyes, and slipping down from the tree I took them to myself. And I shall tell why my ravens fly to you, carrying in their beaks scraps of leather. It is that you may make for yourself a sandal. With that sandal on you may put your foot on the lower jaw of a mighty wolf and rend him. All the shoemakers of the earth cast on the ground scraps of the leather they use so that you may be able to make the sandal for your wolf-rending foot. I have counseled the dwellers on earth to cut off the fingernails and toenails of their dead, lest from those nails the giants make for themselves the ship Naglfar, in which they will sail from the north on the day of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. More Vidar I will tell. Living among men I have wed the daughter of a hero. My son shall live as a mortal among mortals. Ægir is his name. From him shall spring heroes who will fill Valhalla, my own hall in Asgard, with champions for the day of our strife with the giants and with Surtur of the flaming sword. For a long time Odin stayed in that silent place, communing with his silent son, Vidar, who, with his brother, would outlive the dwellers of Asgard and carry the memory of the Æsir and the Vanir into another day and another world. At last Odin went across the wilderness where the grass and bushes grew and where the horse grazed, ready for the sudden journey. He went toward the seashore where the Æsir and the Vanir were gathered for the feast that old Ægir, king of the sea, had offered them. Chapter 5. Thor and Loki in the giant city. All but a few of the dwellers of Asgard had come to the feast offered by Ægir the Old, the giant king of the sea. Frigga was there and Frey and Freyja, Iduna, keeper of the apples of youth, and Bragi, her husband, Tyr the great swordsman, Njord the sea god, Skadi who had wed Njord and hated Loki, and Sif, whose golden hair Loki once shorn. Thor and Loki were there. The dwellers of Asgard, gathered in Ægir's hall, waited for Odin. Before Odin came, Loki made the company merry with tales mocking Thor. His lips were long since freed from the thong the dwarf Brock had sewn them with, and Thor had forgiven the wrong done to Sif. Loki had traveled with Thor through Jotunheim and now told scoffing stories of those wanderings. He said he had seen Thor in his brass chariot, drawn by 2 goats, cross Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge. None of the Æsir or Vanir knew Thor's purpose, but Loki followed him and Thor kept him close. As they rode in the brass chariot, Thor told Loki of his intent. He would go into Jotunheim, even into Utgard, the giant city, and test his strength against the giants. He feared nothing. Mjolnir, his hammer, was with him. Their road lay through Midgard, the world of men. One night, hungry and needing shelter, they saw a peasant's hut. They unyoked the goats and, looking like men, knocked and asked for food and shelter. The peasant and his wife could shelter them but had no food. They had eaten the little they had for supper. The peasant showed them the poor, bare inside, and said he would fish in the morning. "We can't wait till morning," Thor said. "I can provide a good meal." He struck the goats with his hammer and left them lifeless. He skinned them, set bones carefully on the skins, and hid them in a hole above the peasant's fireplace. "No one," he commanded, "must touch the bones I leave here." He brought in the meat, it was cooked, and they sat to eat. The peasant and his wife and their son fed well. The son was Thialfi, a growing lad long underfed. While others ate, Thialfi kept busy with chores. By the time he sat, little remained. When all slept, he rose, took a bone from the skins above the hearth, broke it, and gnawed the marrow. Loki, awake and pleased by mischief, did nothing to stop him. He returned the broken bone and slept. In the morning Thor took the skins out and struck each with his hammer. The goats sprang up alive. One limped badly. Thor found a broken bone. In terrible anger he turned on the peasant and his family. "A bone of my goat has been broken under your roof," he shouted. "For that I shall destroy your house and leave you dead under it." Thialfi wept and came forward. "I did not know what harm I did," he said. Thor raised his hammer to crush him, then lowered it. "You will have to do much service for me for having lamed my goat," he said. "Come with me." So Thialfi went off with Thor and Loki. Thor lifted the shafts of his brass chariot and dragged it into a lonely mountain hollow where neither men nor giants came. He left the goats to rest in a great empty forest until he should call them. Thor, Loki, and Thialfi crossed from Midgard into Jotunheim. Because of Mjolnir, Thor felt secure among giants. Loki trusted his cunning, Thialfi trusted Thor. They traveled long, and Thor and Loki trained the lad to be quick and strong. One day they crossed a wide moor. Night fell and a great wind rose. No shelter showed. In the dusk they saw a shape like a mountain and went toward it, hoping for a cave. Loki noticed a lower shape that looked like shelter. They walked around it and found a house oddly shaped. A long wide hall with no doorway and 5 narrow chambers off it. It is odd but the best shelter, Loki said. You and I, Thor, will take the 2 longest rooms, Thialfi one of the small ones. They lay down, but the mountain outside made a noise like moaning forests and falling cataracts. Each sleeping chamber shook. None slept that night. In the morning they left the 5-chambered house and saw that the mountain was not a mountain at all but a giant. He lay on the ground and then rolled over and sat up. Little men, he shouted, have you passed by a glove of mine on your way? He looked about, found his glove, the 5-room shelter, and put it on his hand. It was his glove. Thor gripped his hammer. Loki and Thialfi stood behind him. The giant seemed good-humored. Where might ye be bound? He asked. To Utgard in Jotunheim, Thor answered boldly. Oh, to that place, the giant said. Come, I'll go with ye so far. Call me Skrymir. Can you give us breakfast? Thor asked crossly, not wanting to show fear. I can give you breakfast, but I don't want to stop now. We'll eat when I'm hungry. Here is my wallet for your provisions. He gave Thor the wallet. Thor put it on his back and set Thialfi upon it. The giant strode on. Thor and his companions barely kept up. At midday Skrymir showed signs of halting beneath an enormous tree. I'll sleep before I eat, he said, but you can open my wallet and make your meal. He stretched out and snored, sounds like moaning forests and cataracts. Thor and company were too hungry to be cowed. Thor tried to untie the wallet's knots. They held. Loki tried, no luck. Thor tried to break them by strength. He could not. In fury he flung the wallet down. The snoring grew louder. Thor grasped Mjolnir and flung it at the giant's head. It struck. Skrymir only stirred. Did a leaf fall on my head? He muttered and turned over. Thor flung it again. Skrymir said, Has an acorn fallen on my forehead? At last Thor struck such a blow that it was the greatest he had ever dealt. Skrymir opened his eyes, complaining that a bird pecked at his forehead, and then rose, took his wallet, and gave them provisions. Thor refused, but Loki and Thialfi ate. After the meal Skrymir rose. Time for us to go toward Utgard, he said. As they walked, Skrymir told Loki, I always feel very small when I go into Utgard. I'm such a weak fellow and the folk there so big. But you and your friends will be welcomed. They will make little pets of you. Then he left them and they entered Utgard, the giant city. Giants moved in the streets. Loki noticed they were not as huge as Skrymir had claimed. Utgard was the giant's Asgard. Its buildings lacked the beauty of the gods' palaces, Gladsheim, Breidablik, Fensaler. Here rose huge, shapeless structures like mountains or icebergs. Thor and Loki with Thialfi went to the king's palace. Thor's hammer reassured them. They passed rows of giant guards and reached the king's seat. We know you, Thor and Loki, said the giant king. Thor has come to test his strength. Tomorrow we shall have a contest. Today our youths have sports. If your servant would try his swiftness, let him race. Chapter 6. How Thor and Loki befooled Thrym the giant. Loki told another tale about Thor and Thrym, a stupid giant who yet had cunning streaks in him. Loki and Thor had been in this giant's house. Thrym made a feast for them, and Thor had been unwatchful. When they were far from Jotunheim, Thor missed Mjolnir, the hammer that was the defense of Asgard and the help of the gods. He could not remember how or where he had mislaid it. Loki's thoughts turned toward Thrym. Thor, who had sworn never to let the hammer out of his sight, did not know what to do. Loki thought it would be worth trying to see if Teacher Wyan knew anything about it. First Loki hurried to Asgard. He crossed the Rainbow Bridge and passed Heimdall without speaking. He told none of the dwellers in Asgard of Thor's loss until he reached Frigga's palace. To Frigga he said, You must lend me your falcon dress until I fly to Thrym's dwelling and find out if he knows where Mjolnir is. If every feather were silver I would give it to you to go on such an errand, Frigga answered. So Loki put on the falcon dress and flew to Jotunheim. From a rock above Thrym's dwelling he watched, in the plumage of a falcon, the giant who was upon a hillside fastening golden and silver collars upon his hounds. While Loki watched, he heard Thrym boast, I put collars of silver and gold on you now, my hounds, but soon we giants will have the gold of Asgard to deck our hounds and our steeds, yet even the necklace of Freya to put upon you, the best of my hounds. For Mjolnir, the defense of Asgard, is in Thrym's holding. Loki spoke down from above. Yeah, we know that Mjolnir is in thy possession, O Thrym, said he, but know thou that the eyes of the watchful gods are upon thee. Ha, Loki, shape changer, said Thrym. You are there. But all your watching will not help you to find Mjolnir. I have buried Thor's hammer 8 miles deep in the earth. Find it if you can. It lies below the caves of the dwarfs. It is useless for us to search for Thor's hammer, Loki said. It is useless for you to search for it, the giant sulked. But what a recompense you would gain if you restored Thor's hammer to the dwellers in Asgard, Loki urged. No, cunning Loki, I will never restore it, not for any recompense, Thrym answered. Yet bethink thee, Loki pressed. Is there not an Asgard you would like to own? No treasure, no possession? Odin's ring? Frey's ship, Skidbladner? No, said Thrym. Only one thing could the dwellers in Asgard offer me that I would take in exchange for Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. And what would that be, Thrym? Loki asked. She whom many giants have striven to gain, Freya for my wife, said Thrym. Loki watched him long. The giant would not alter his demand. I will tell the dwellers in Asgard of your demand, Loki said at last, and he flew away. By this time all in Asgard had heard of the loss of Mjolnir. Heimdall cried to Loki as he crossed the Rainbow Bridge, but Loki did not stop. He went straight to the hall where the gods sat in council and told the Æsir and the Vanir Thrym's demand. None would agree to give Freya to Thrym. The gods were cast down. Without Mjolnir, their power to help men and to defend Asgard would be broken. They sat in gloom. Then cunning Loki spoke. I have thought of a trick that may win back the hammer. Let us pretend to send Freya to Jotunheim as a bride, but have one of the gods go in Freya's veil and dress. Which of the gods would bring himself to do such a shameful thing? They asked. Oh, he who lost the hammer, Thor, should be prepared to do as much to win it back, Loki replied. Thor. Let Thor win back the hammer by Loki's trick, cried the Æsir and Vanir. They left the plan to Loki to arrange. Loki found Thor and told him the only way to win back Mjolnir. Thor agreed to do whatever must be done. I am to take you to Jotunheim as a bride for Thrym, Loki said with a laugh. Thou art to go in bridal dress and veil, in Freya's veil and bridal dress. What? I dress in woman's garb? Thor shouted. Yeah, Thor, and wear a veil over thy head and a garland of flowers upon it. I wear a garland of flowers? And rings upon thy fingers, and a bunch of housekeeper's keys in thy girdle. Cease thy mockery, Loki, Thor growled, or I shall shake thee. It is no mockery. Thou must do this to win Mjolnir back. Thrym will take no other recompense than Freya. I shall be with thee as thy bridesmaid. O sweet, sweet maiden Thor. Loki, said Thor, thou didst devise all this to mock me. I in a bridal dress. The dwellers in Asgard will never cease to laugh. Yeah, Loki said, but there will be no laughter unless thou bringest back the hammer. It is the only way, O Thor, Loki insisted. So Thor and Loki set out for Jotunheim. A messenger had gone before them to tell Thrym that Freya was coming with her bridesmaid, that the wedding feast was to be prepared, and that Mjolnir was to be at hand. Thrym and his giant mother made ready. Thor came veiled and crowned with a garland, a red embroidered robe about him, a girdle of housekeeper's keys at his side. Loki, veiled also, stood with him as bridesmaid. Thrym's great hall was swept and garnished. Tables were spread. Thrym's mother vaunted that her son was getting one of the beauteous dwellers in Asgard, Freya. When they crossed the threshold, Thrym went to welcome them and would have raised the veil. Loki put his hand on the giant's shoulder and whispered, Forbear. We dwellers in Asgard are reserved and bashful. Freya would be offended to be kissed before this company. I, said Thrym's mother. Do not raise thy bride's veil, son. These dwellers in Asgard are more refined in their ways. She took Thor by the hand and led him to the table. The giants stared, but the veils hid the faces. Thor sat with Thrym on one side and Loki on the other. The feast began. Thor, heedless of maidenly decorum, ate 8 salmon at once. Loki nudged and pressed his foot, but Thor paid no heed. After the salmon he ate a whole ox. These maids of Asgard, the giants whispered, they may be refined, as Thrym's mother says, but their appetites are lusty enough. No wonder she eats, poor thing, Loki said to Thrym. It has been 8 days since we left Asgard. Freya never ate on the way, so anxious was she to see Thrym. Poor darling, cooed the giant. What she has eaten is little after all. Thor nodded toward the mead vat. Thrym ordered servants to bring a measure for his bride. Servant after servant brought measures to Thor. While the giants watched and Loki nudged, he drank 3 barrels of mead. Oh, the giants told Thrym's mother, we are not so sorry that we failed to win a bride from Asgard. At last a piece of the veil slipped, and Thor's eyes were seen for an instant. Oh, how comes it that Freya has such glaring eyes? Said Thrym. Poor thing, Loki answered. No wonder her eyes are glaring. She has not slept for 8 nights, so anxious was she to come to you. But now join hands with your bride. First, put into her hands the hammer Mimir, that she may know the great recompense the giants have given for her coming. Thrym rose and brought Mimir into the feasting hall. Thor could hardly restrain himself. Loki kept him still. Thrym put the hammer's handle into the hands of the bride. Thor's hands closed on his hammer. Instantly he sprang up. The veil fell off. His countenance and blazing eyes were seen by all. He struck one blow upon the wall, down it crashed. Thor strode out of the ruin with Mimir, Loki beside him, while within the giants bellowed as the roof and walls fell upon them. Thus Mimir, the defense of Asgard, was lost and won back. Chapter 7, Ægir's Feast, How Thor Triumphed. Between midday and evening the Æsir and the Vanir gathered in old Ægir's hall and listened while Loki mocked Thor with tales. Night fell and yet no banquet was brought. They called Ægir's underservants, Fimafinger and Elder, and begged supper. It was scant, but the guests went to bed saying, "Great must be the preparations that old Ægir is making to feast us tomorrow." The next day wore on and still no preparations showed. At midday Frey rose and went to seek Ægir, the giant king of the sea. He found Ægir sitting with bowed head in his inner hall. "Ho Ægir," said Frey, "what of the banquet you have offered to the dwellers in Asgard?" Ægir mumbled and pulled at his beard. At last he looked up and told his guest the truth. The mead for the feast was not yet brewed. Worse, he lacked a kettle large enough to brew mead for such a company. The Æsir and Vanir were sorely disappointed. Who else outside Asgard would give them a feast? Ægir was their only friendly giant. A giant youth there spoke up. His kinsman Hrymer had a mead kettle a mile wide. If they could fetch Hrymer's kettle, they could brew a feast fit for all. "One of us can go for that kettle," Frey said. "Hrymer dwells beyond the deepest forest and behind the highest mountain," the giant youth warned, "and Hrymer himself is rough and churlish." "I will go to Hrymer's dwelling," said Thor, rising. "I will get the mile-wide kettle from him by force or cunning." Thor buckled on his belt that doubled his strength, drew on the iron gloves that made him grasp Mjolnir, took his hammer, and called the giant youth his guide. The Æsir and Vanir applauded, but Loki threw one last jibe. "Do not let the hammer out of your hands this time, bride of Thrym," he shouted. Thor and the giant youth went through the deepest forest and over the highest mountain until at last they came to Hrymer's house. On a hillock before the dwelling squatted a dreadful warden, a giant crone with many heads growing from her shoulders. As they drew near, all her heads screamed and yelped. Thor would have hurled Mjolnir at her, but a giant woman came to the door, making a sign of peace. The youthful guide greeted her as his mother. "Son, come within," she said. "Bring your fellow farer with you." The crone kept up her screaming, but Thor passed in. The giant woman grew fearful when she saw one of the dwellers in Asgard. "Hrymer will be in a rage to find an Æsir under his roof," she warned. "It is not likely he will succeed," Thor answered, Mjolnir in hand. "Hide for a little while," she pleaded. "He comes back from the chase in a stormy temper. After he has eaten he is easier to deal with. Hide until he has finished supper." Thor agreed. He and the giant youth hid behind a pillar in the hall. They had barely done so when Hrymer came in from the chase dragging a wild bull he had taken. He tied the bull to the doorpost and then, seeing the pillar, fixed his gaze upon it. The pillar split from top to bottom. It broke across, the crossbeam fell, kettles and cauldrons rattled down with a terrible noise. Then Thor stepped from behind the ruined pillar. "It is I who am here, friend Hrymer," he said, his hand on his hammer. Hrymer, who knew Thor and the dread force of his hammer, drew back. "Now that you are in my house, Asa Thor, I will not quarrel with you. Make supper ready for Asa Thor, your son, and myself," he told the giant woman. A plentiful supper was spread. Hrymer and Thor and the giant youth sat to 3 whole roast oxen. Thor ate the whole of 1 ox. Hrymer, who had eaten nearly 2, grumbled at Thor's appetite. "You'll clear my fields, Asa Thor, if you stay long with me," he warned. "Do not grumble, Hrymer," Thor said. "Tomorrow I'll go fishing and bring you back the weight of what I ate." "Then I'll go fishing with you," Hrymer replied. "And don't be frightened if I take you out on a rough sea." Hrymer rose first the next morning, pole and ropes in hand. "Time to start earning your meal, Asa Thor," he said. When they were both in the courtyard, Hrymer told Thor to provide a bait large enough. They would fish where monsters lay, not little fish. Thor took up the horns of the bull Hrymer had captured. "Will this bait be big enough?" Thor asked, laying his hands on the bull's mighty horns. "Yes, if you are big enough to handle it," Hrymer sneered. Thor struck the bull full in the middle of the forehead. It fell dead. Thor twisted the head off and said, I have my bait and I am ready to go with you, Hrymer. Hrymer, hiding his rage, walked down to the boat without speaking. You may row for the first few strokes, he said once they were afloat, but when we come to the rough water I'll take the oars. Thor made a few strokes that carried the boat into the middle of the ocean. Hrymer let out his line and soon hooked something huge. The boat rocked until Thor steadied it. Hrymer hauled up the largest whale in those seas. Good fishing, Thor said as he set his own bait. I thought to show you something bigger than salmon fishing, Thor replied. He cast the great bull's head as bait. Down it sank through the waters where the whales swam and deeper still toward the haunts of the world-encircling serpent. The serpent reared as the bait passed through its coils. It gulped the head and drew the hook into its gullet. Terribly surprised, it lashed the ocean into a fury. The boat lurched, ships on the sea were hurled and wrecked. Thor braced himself, spread his legs till they touched the bottom of the ocean, and stood on the bed as he hauled on the line. The serpent fought and lashed, loosening coil after coil from around the world. At last its terrible head broke the surface and reared above the waters, towering over the boat. Thor dropped the line and seized Mjolnir, ready to strike. Hrymer, seething with envy and unwilling that Thor should surpass him, cut the line. The serpent's head sank back into the sea. Thor hurled his hammer after it. The hammer followed the sinking head down fathom after fathom and struck the monster. The blow, though blunted by water, was fierce. A bellow of pain rose from the depths that fright all Jotunheim. This will be something to tell the Æsir, Thor said. Something to make them forget Loki's mockeries. Hrymer rode back in silence, dragging the whale. He was too angry to speak. At supper Thor boasted of his triumph over the serpent. Hrymer at last taunted him. Do you think yourself powerful, Asa Thor? Can you break the cup before you? Thor took up the cup and hurled it against a stone pillar. The cup fell without a crack. The pillar shattered. Hrymer laughed. So feeble are the folk of Asgard, he sneered. Thor took the cup again and flung it harder. The cup lay intact. Then the giant woman, mother to the youth, sang softly as she plied her wheel. Not at the pillar of the stead, but at Hrymer's massy head. When you next the goblet throw, let his head receive the blow. Thor took the cup and aimed true. It struck Hrymer full on the forehead and fell in pieces. Hrymer's head remained unharmed. So you can break a cup, Hrymer cried, but can you lift my mile-wide kettle? Show me where it is and I shall try, Thor answered. Hrymer lifted a floorboard and showed the mile-wide kettle down in the cellar. Thor stooped, took the kettle by the brim, and lifted slowly as if with a mighty effort. Hrymer mocked, You can lift, but can you carry it? I will try, Thor said. He set the kettle on his head, strode to the door and ran. He was across the mountain before he looked back. The giant crone with many heads gave chase, yelping and screaming. Uphill and down dale Thor raced with the mile-wide kettle upon his head. At last the crone leaped to jump a lake, fell in, and Thor was free. Thor returned to the Æsir and Vanir in triumph, the mile-wide kettle upon his head. Those who had laughed at Loki's mockeries rose and cheered. The mead was brewed, the feast prepared, and the greatest banquet the kings of the giants ever gave to the dwellers in Asgard was eaten in gladness. A strange and silent figure sat at the banquet, a giant no one knew. When the feast was over, Odin spoke to him, O Skirmr, giant king of Utgard, rise and tell Thor of all you practiced upon him when he and Loki came to your city. The stranger stood. Thor and Loki recognized him. It was Skirmr, the giant king whose halls had held their contests. Skirmr told them plainly how he had deceived them. He admitted he had met them on the moor and given his name as Skirmr to bar their entrance. The wallet he had given them to carry provisions was tied with magic knots. The mountain placed between them and himself took the blows Thor thought struck Skirmr. The contests were not what Thor and Loki supposed. He revealed each trick. Thialfi's race had been against thought itself. Loki's contest had been with devouring fire. The drinking horn's end had reached to the sea so that when Thor drank the sea level fell. The cat Thor strove to lift was Nidhogg, the dragon that gnaws at Yggdrasil's roots. The hag Ellie was old age itself. Truly, Skirmr said, we were terrified when we saw what you could do. Then he left the hall. Once more the Æsir and the Vanir rose and cheered Thor, Thor, the strongest of all who guard Asgard. Chapter 8, The Dwarf's Hoard and the Curse that it brought. Now old Ægir's feast was over, and all the Æsir and the Vanir made ready for their return to Asgard. Two only went another way, Odin, the eldest of the gods, and Loki the mischievous. Odin and Loki laid aside all the tokens of divine power and strength. They were going into the world of men, and they would be as men merely. Together they wandered through Midgard, mingling with kings and farmers, outlaws and true men, warriors and householders, thralls and counselors, courteous men and ill-mannered men. One day they came to the bank of a mighty river and rested, listening to the beat of iron upon iron in a place nearby. Presently, on a rock in the middle of the river, they saw an otter come. The otter went into the water and came back with a catch of salmon. He devoured it there. Then Odin saw Loki do a senseless and evil thing. Taking up a great stone, he flung it at the otter. The stone struck the beast on the skull and knocked him dead. "Loki, Loki, why hast thou done a thing so senseless and so evil?" Odin said. Loki only laughed. He waded across the water and came back with the river creature. "Why didst thou take the life of the beast?" Odin asked. "The mischief in me made me do it," said Loki. He drew out his knife and, ripping the otter open, began to flay him. When the skin was off the beast, he folded it and stuck it into his belt. Then Odin and he left the river. They came to a house with 2 smithies beside it, and from the smithies came the sound of iron beating upon iron. They went within and asked that they might eat and rest. An old man who was cooking fish over a fire pointed to a bench. "Rest there," said he, "and when the fish is cooked I will give you something good to eat. My son is a fine fisher and he brings me the best." Odin and Loki sat on the bench while the old man cooked. "My name is Hreidmar," he said. "I have 2 sons who work in the smithies without. I have a 3rd son also. It is he who does the fishing for us. And who may ye be, O wayfaring men?" Loki and Odin gave names to Hreidmar that were not the names by which they were known in Asgard or on Midgard. Hreidmar served fish to them and they ate. "And what adventures have ye met upon your travels?" he asked. "Few folk come this way to tell me of happenings." "I killed an otter with a cast of a stone," Loki said with a laugh. "You killed an otter?" Hreidmar cried. "Where did you kill one?" "Where I killed him is of no import to you, old man," said Loki. "His skin is a good one, however. I have it on my belt." Hreidmar snatched the skin from Loki's belt. As soon as he saw it he shrieked, "Fafnir, Regan, my sons, come here and bring the thralls of your smithies. Come, come, come." "Why dost thou make such an outcry, old man?" said Odin. "Ye have slain my son Otter," shrieked Hreidmar. "This in my hands is the skin of my son." As Hreidmar spoke, 2 young men bearing the 4 hammers of the smithies came in, followed by the thralls. "Strike these men dead with your 4 hammers, O Fafnir, O Regan," their father cried. "Otter, who used to stay in the river and whom I changed by enchantment into a river beast that he might fish for me, has been slain by these men." "Peace," said Odin. "We have slain thy son, it would seem, but it was unwittingly that we did the deed. We will give a recompense for the death of thy son." "What recompense will ye give?" said Hreidmar, his small, sharp eyes fixed on Odin. Then did Odin, the eldest of the gods, speak a word unworthy of his wisdom. He might have promised some draught of Mimir's well, some wise making, but instead he thought of gold. "Set a price on the life of thy son and we will pay that price in gold," he said. "Maybe ye are great kings traveling through the world," Hreidmar answered. "If ye are, ye will have to find gold that will cover every hair upon the skin of him whom ye have killed." Odin, his mind fixed on treasure, thought of a certain hoard guarded by a dwarf. No other wealth in the 9 worlds would be enough to satisfy Hreidmar's demand. He thought on how it might be taken, and shamefaced he said to Loki, "Dost thou know of Andvari's hoard?" "I know of it," said Loki sharply, "and I know where it is hidden. Wilt thou give me leave to fetch Andvari's hoard?" Odin spoke to Hreidmar. "I will stay with thee as a hostage," he said, "if thou wilt let this one go to fetch a treasure that will cover the otter's skin hair by hair." "I will let this be done," said old Hreidmar. "Go now," he bade Loki. Loki left the house and set out. Andvari was a dwarf who, in the early days, had gained for himself the greatest treasure in the 9 worlds. To guard it unceasingly he changed himself into a fish, a pike, and swam in the pool before the cave where the hoard was hidden. All in Asgard knew of the dwarf and of the hoard. There was a thought among the gods that the hoard should not be meddled with, that some evil was joined to it. But Odin had given the word that it was to be taken. Loki set out for Andvari's cave rejoicing. He came to the pool and watched for a glimpse of the pike. Soon he saw the pike swimming cautiously before the cave. He would have to catch it and hold it till the treasure was given for ransom. The pike, sensing danger, darted away. Not with hands nor hook and line could Loki catch such a fish. Only a net woven by magic could hold him. Loki thought where he might get such a net. Ran, the wife of old Ægir, the giant king of the sea, had a net woven by magic. In it she took all that was wrecked on the sea. Loki sought Ran. He found her down by the rocks, standing in the surf, drawing out with her net every piece of treasure that the waves had brought, corals and amber, bits of gold and silver. Still she plied her net greedily. "Thou knowst me, Ægir's wife," Loki said. "I know thee, Loki," Ran replied. "Lend me thy net," Loki asked. "That I will not do," said Ran. "Lend me thy net that I may catch Andvari the dwarf who boasts that he has a greater treasure than ever thou wilt take out of the sea," Loki urged. Ran ceased her work and looked at him steadily. She hated the dwarfs, they boasted of treasures greater than the seas. She especially hated Andvari. "There is nothing more to gather here," she said, "and if thou wilt swear to bring me back my net by tomorrow I shall lend it to thee." "I swear by the sparks of Muspelheim that I will bring thy net back to thee by tomorrow, O Queen of Ægir," Loki cried. Ran put the magic net into his hands. He went back to the pool. Dark was the water where Andvari floated as a pike. Dark it was, but to him it was all golden with the light of his hoard. For the sake of this hoard he had given up the companionship of his kind. For its keeping he had taken on the dumbness and deafness of a fish. As he swam before the cave he became aware of a shadow above. He slipped toward the bank. As he turned he saw a net sweeping toward him. He sank. But the magic net had spread and he fell into its meshes. Suddenly he was out of the water, gasping on the bank. He would have died had he not undone his transformation. Soon he was a dwarf again. "Andvari, thou art caught. It is one of the Æsir who has taken thee," his captor said. "Loki," he gasped. "Thou art caught and thou shalt be held," Loki said. "It is the will of the Æsir that thou give up thy hoard to me." My hoard, the dwarf shouted. "Never will I give up my hoard. I hold thee till thou givest it to me," said Loki. "Unjust, unjust," cried Andvari. "It is only thou, Loki, who art unjust. I will go to the throne of Odin and have him punish thee for striving to rob me of my treasure." "Odin hath sent me to fetch thy hoard to him," Loki said. "Can it be that all the Æsir are unjust?" Andvari raged. "Ah yes. In the beginning they cheated the giant who built the wall round their city. The Æsir are unjust." Loki had Andvari in his power. After much rage and defiance the dwarf, trembling and crying, took Loki into his cavern. Turning a rock aside, he showed him the mass of gold and gems that was his hoard. At once Loki began to gather into the magic net lumps and ingots and circlets of gold, with rubies and sapphires and emeralds. Andvari snatched at something on the heap but made no sound. At last all was drawn into the net and Loki stood ready to bear the hoard away. "There is one thing more to be given," said Loki, "the ring that thou, Andvari, snatched from the heap." "I snatched nothing," the dwarf protested. He shook with anger. His teeth gnashed and froth came on his lips. "I snatched nothing from the heap." But Loki pulled up his arm and a ring fell to the ground, the ring that Andvari had hidden beneath his armpit. It was the most precious thing in all the hoard. Had it remained with him, Andvari would have thought his treasure whole, for this ring could make gold. It was of refined gold and engraved with a rune of power. Loki took this ring and put it on his finger. Then the dwarf screamed and, turning his thumbs toward him, uttered a curse. "The ring with the rune of power upon it, may it weigh down thy fortune, and load thee with evil, thou Loki and all, who lust to possess the ring I have cherished." As Andvari spoke, Loki saw a figure rise in the cave and move toward him. He knew her, Gulvig, a giant woman who once had been in Asgard. Far back, when the gods had come to their holy hill and before Asgard was built, 3 women of the giants had come among the Æsir. After they dwelt with the gods, the lives of the Æsir altered. They began to value and hoard gold. They thought of war. Odin hurled his spear among messengers from the Vanir, and war came into the world. The 3 were driven from Asgard. Peace was made with the Vanir. The apples of lasting youth were grown again. But never were the Æsir as happy as before the 3 came. Gulvig was one of the 3 who had blighted the gods' early happiness. And behold, she stood in the cave where Andvari hoarded his treasure, smiling as she advanced toward Loki. "So, Loki," she said, "thou sayest me again? And Odin, who sent thee to this cave, shall see me again. Lo, Loki, I go to Odin to be thy messenger and to tell him that thou comest with Andvari's hoard." With that smile she left the cave with light steps. Loki drew the ends of the magic net together, gathered the treasure in its meshes and went out. Odin, the eldest of the gods, stood leaning on his spear, looking at the otter's skin spread before him. One came into the dwelling swiftly. Odin saw that she who came so quick and glad was Gulvig. Odin raised his spear to cast it at her. "Lay thy spear down, Odin," she said. "I dwelt long in the dwarf's cave. Thy word hath unloosed me, and the curse set over Andvari's ring hath sent me here. Lay thy spear down and look on me, O eldest of the gods. Thou didst cast me out of Asgard, but thy word hath brought me back. And if ye too, Odin and Loki, have bought yourselves free with gold and may enter Asgard, surely I, Gullveig, am free to enter also. Odin lowered his spear and sighed. Surely it is so, Gullveig, he said. I may not forbid thee to enter Asgard. Would I had thought of giving the man Kvaser's mead or Mimir's well rather than this gold as recompense. As they spoke, Loki returned to Hreidmar's dwelling and laid the magic net on the floor. Old Hreidmar, with his sharp eyes and huge Fafnir and lean hungry-looking Regan came in to gaze on the gold and gems shining through the meshes. They jostled to see, and Hreidmar cried, No one may be here but these two kings and I while we measure out the gold and gems and see whether the recompense is sufficient. Go without, sons of mine. Fafnir and Regan were forced to leave the dwelling. They went out slowly and Gullveig went with them, whispering to both. With shaking hands old Hreidmar spread out the otter skin. He drew out the ears and the tail and the paws so that every single hair could be shown. Long he crawled on his knees, his sharp eyes searching over every line of the skin. And still on his knees he said, Begin now, O kings, and cover with a gem or a piece of gold every hair on the skin that was my son. Odin stood leaning on his spear, watching the gold and gems being paid out. Loki took the gold, the ingots and lumps and circlets. He took the gems, the rubies, the emeralds, the sapphires, and began to place them over each hair. Soon the middle of the skin was all covered. Then he set gems and gold upon the paws and the tail. In a little while the otter skin glittered so that one might think it could light up the world. Still Loki hunted for some empty place where a gem or a piece of gold might be put. At last he rose. Every gem and every piece of gold had been drawn from the net. Every hair on the otter's skin had been covered. Old Hreidmar, still on his hands and knees, peered and peered over the hide, searching for a hair that might have been missed. At length he lifted himself on his knees. His mouth hung open and for a moment he could not speak. He touched Odin at the knee, and when Odin stooped he showed him a single hair upon the lip that remained uncovered. What meanest thou? Loki cried, turning on the crouching man. Your ransom is not paid yet. Look, here is still a hair uncovered. You may not go until every hair is covered with gold or a gem, Hreidmar answered. Peace, old man, Loki said roughly. All the dwarf's hoard has been given thee. Ye may not go until every hair has been covered, Hreidmar repeated. There is no more gold or gems, Loki returned. Then ye may not go, Hreidmar cried, springing to his feet. It was true. Odin and Loki could not leave that house until the recompense they had agreed upon was paid in full. Where now would the Aesir find more gold? Odin's eye fell on the gleam upon Loki's finger, the ring he had taken from Andvari. Thy fingering, Odin said. Put thy fingering over the hair on the otter's skin. Loki drew off the ring, the gold with the rune upon it, and laid it upon the lip hair. Hreidmar clapped his hands and screamed aloud. Huge Fafnir and lean, hungry Regan entered, Gullveig close behind them. They clustered about the son's skin, glittering with gold and gems. But they looked more at one another than at the treasure, and deadly were the glances Fafnir and Regan cast upon their father, and upon each other. Over Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge, past all the Aesir and the Vanir who had been at old Ægir's feast, Frey and Freya, Frigga, Idun and Sif, Tyr with his sword and Thor in his chariot drawn by the goats. Loki came after them, and behind all came Odin, the father of the gods. He walked slowly, his head bowed, for he knew an unwelcome presence followed. The returning Gullveig, once cast out of Asgard, whose coming the gods could not forbid.